Welcome to the Noticias El Salvador SV podcast, a space for conversation and reflection, where we explore current events in El Salvador and around the world. If you'd like to support this project, you'll find the payment options, PayPal or QR Bitcoin, in the content description. For those requesting interviews, please note that we are not currently offering podcasts in that format. However, if you'd like to advertise your products, please email us at the address in the description. Find us on your favorite platform as Noticias El Salvador SV.
Today, we're setting our sights on a pretty big deep dive, really looking at two major areas. Our mission, basically, is to analyze a whole stack of recent sources. We're looking at these high-stakes international geopolitical moves, economic maneuvers, frankly, it's intelligence warfare, diplomatic breaks, and then we want to contrast all that global turbulence with key national developments right here in El Salvador. We'll focus particularly on the push for technological innovation and infrastructure growth. We're trying to map out those connections, often hidden ones, between the cost of global conflict and this drive for local stability.
It really is a study in contrasting scales, isn't it? But, the underlying mechanism, I think, always comes back to economics. Who ultimately pays the price when things get unstable? And maybe more interestingly, what kind of unconventional steps are leaders willing to take to get some financial security? What jumps out right away, I think, on the international side is just how fast security cooperation can, completely fall apart when the costs, both financial and, frankly, ethical, become too much for key partners to bear.
Okay, so let's unpack that first huge story. It really centers on this escalating war against drug trafficking in the Americas. Colombian President Gustavo Petro, he's ordered this sweeping immediate suspension of all intelligence cooperation with the United States security agencies. And we're not talking about some, minor political statement. This is a total operational halt. It covers the Police Intelligence Directorate, Naval Intelligence, Air Intelligence, Military Intelligence, the whole core of their shared capabilities.
Mm-hmm. It's a strategic earthquake, really, and it seems almost entirely driven by a clash over how operations are being conducted and the resulting financial and human outcomes. I mean, Colombia is the world's biggest cocaine producer. That cooperation is absolutely vital for intercepting drug flows going north. So when you suddenly halt cooperation across four, critical intelligence agencies, you're essentially blinding the United States operationally in that whole region. It's a massive disruption.
And the root cause, the flashpoint, seems to be these continued United States attacks on suspected, quote, narco boats in the Caribbean and the Pacific. Petro is claiming these missile strikes, these bombings, have led to the deaths of 69 individuals. That seems to be the human cost that's really driving this diplomatic break.
And Petro is framing this very, very sharply as a human rights issue, one that, in his view, overrides the operational goal of stopping the drugs. He's been incredibly critical of the bombings. He calls them, and this is his term, extrajudicial executions against poor boatmen. That kind of language, it signals a really profound ethical and maybe legal gap opening up between allies who traditionally work very closely together. It shifts the whole conversation from just counter-narcotic strategy to questions of international law.
Yeah, and he really doubled down on this stance, didn't he? During the CELAC EU summit, he explicitly connected his concerns about using, disproportionate military force against organized crime in the Caribbean. He linked that to the international worries voiced by leaders like Lula da Silva from Brazil and Kaja Kallas from Estonia about missile strikes in places like Gaza.
From a financial and strategic analyst's perspective, this rupture is incredibly significant. Why? Because of the disruption, or maybe the lack of planned disruption it creates in the global narcotics supply chain. The original goal, presumably, was to disrupt the drug trade with military force. But ironically, this break in cooperation might actually destabilize the market in a way that, maybe benefits the cartels in the short term. The United States' ability to intercept and control those flows through specific choke points, it's severely compromised now. If that supply chain becomes less monitored, less predictable, prices could fluctuate wildly. Or perhaps worse, the trade just finds new routes, which increases volatility and risk for all the regional economies. And the sources, they mentioned that 4 of the 18 vessels attacked had direct links to Colombian networks. So it underscores the direct hit on their own maritime transport structure.
And this fracture, it goes deeper than just Colombia, right? We're learning the United Kingdom also stopped sharing intelligence with Washington about suspicious vessels in the Caribbean. and the UK specifically called the United States attacks illegal.
That incorrect. That is probably the most significant confirmation of a real breakdown among major high-level security partners. You have to remember, the UK isn't just some distant observer here. They control really strategic Caribbean territories. Think the British Virgin Islands, Anguilla, Bermuda. These are crucial transshipment points. So their decision to halt cooperation, citing specifically that the U.S. operations were extrajudicial executions contrary to international law, well, that shows a deep fundamental disagreement on the very legality of the force being used. They're basically compromising key intelligence protocols. These protocols rely on real-time satellite data, signals intelligence shared between London and Washington about specific boats, transponder data. Losing that UK access, it fundamentally degrades the shared picture, the situational awareness needed for interdiction efforts. And the fact that the sources note 76 deaths in the Caribbean and Eastern Pacific since these attacks apparently began in September, well, that gives you the context for this really high-stakes ethical clash.
So, okay, given that huge intelligence gap, that fracture, the United States response seems to have been immediate and pretty aggressive on the military side. The largest U.S. aircraft carrier, the nuclear-powered USS Gerald R. Ford, has been transferred to the Southern Command area of responsibility right there in the Caribbean.
Right. This military reinforcement, it's confirmed by officials, and it's a very clear signal. It says the United States is essentially substituting that lost intelligence cooperation with overwhelming military power projection. And deploying the USS Gerald R. Ford, well, that's more than just sending a big ship. It's a nuclear-powered supercarrier. That means it has almost unlimited endurance. It doesn't need constant refueling like conventional carriers. It can sustain massive logistical operations for months on end, projecting air power, surveillance, rapid response capabilities across the entire Southern Command theater. And its primary mission reinforcement, according to the sources, is specifically ordered against the Cartel de los Soles. So this move clearly signals that despite all the diplomatic fallout, despite the ethical concerns raised by allies, the United States is prioritizing the military disruption of these drug operations. They're committing their largest, most expensive naval asset to enforce their counter-narcotics policy.
Okay, so we've seen the high cost, the instability of that kind of military escalation in the Caribbean. Let's turn now to leaders who seem to be seeking economic solutions, specifically in the Middle East. We see another major geopolitical shift here, but this time it seems focused entirely on trying to secure stability through, well, financial diplomacy. Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara has declared his main objective is building a, quote, constructive relationship with the United States. He even acknowledged, pretty frankly, that the last 100 years was not a very good relationship.
That's the very frank admission, isn't it? And it sounds very transactional. It immediately points towards a powerful financial reason behind this outreach. Al-Shara highlighted, common security and economic interests. He stressed that Syria's stability impacts the whole region, but the single core economic lever that seems to be driving this diplomatic push, it's lifting the sanctions.
Exactly. He tied it together explicitly. Stability depends on the economy, and economic development depends on lifting sanctions. He even stated that conversations about this have been happening for months, and that, quote, good results have already been achieved. Though, critically, they're still waiting for the final decision from Washington.
Right. And to really grasp the economic weight of that decision, you have to look at how these sanctions actually work. We're mainly talking about the Caesar Act. Essentially, it penalizes anyone, international banks, companies, governments, who provides financial or technical help to the Syrian government for things like reconstruction or trade beyond very limited humanitarian aid. This has just strangled Syria's ability to do international business, to rebuild its infrastructure, to stabilize its currency. The estimated cost of reconstruction needed in Syria, it's astronomical, hundreds of billions of dollars. Lifting those sanctions, even partially, would unlock foreign investment, unlock trade, especially with Gulf states. It would give al-Shara's government the financial resources it needs to try and deliver the stability he's promising.
But there's a huge hurdle here, isn't there? The United States Congress. Al-Shara's past as a combatant is a major sticking point for many members of Congress. He offered a defense saying, fighting is not shameful if it is done for noble goals, especially if you are defending your land and people suffering injustice.
Well, that defense forces the United States into a very clear financial risk-reward calculation, doesn't it? On one hand, keeping the sanctions aligns with domestic political demands for accountability regarding his history, alleged human rights violations. But on the other hand, maintaining that pressure indefinitely risks the complete collapse of Syria. That could lead to a massive regional crisis, refugees, security vacuums, which would ultimately cost the United States and its allies far more in the long run through aid and military stabilization efforts. So easing sanctions, even just partially, it represents a calculated risk. It's potentially exchanging political pressure for regional economic stabilization. That's a huge financial pivot they're considering.
Okay, let's pivot back now to South America. Venezuela is also apparently preparing for potential conflict with the United States. But their strategy seems defined not by, massive naval assets or diplomatic talks, but more by economic necessity and, frankly, chaos. Sources are revealing that Venezuela is preparing for a prolonged resistance. Think guerrilla warfare, sabotage against any potential U.S. aerial or ground attack.
This is classic asymmetric strategy. It's often the only viable defense when you're facing a conventionally superior military force. But it comes with its own unique financial paradoxes.
And the defense plans described sound highly specific. They detail tactics using small units operating at over 280 different points for sabotage, irregular tactics. And even more dramatically, there's this secondary strategy mentioned called anarchization. This apparently involves using intelligence services, armed sympathizers, to basically destabilize Caracas from within. The goal is to make the capital ungovernable for any foreign occupying force. We also hear they've deployed portable Igla missiles in mountainous areas, likely for air defense against helicopters or low-flying aircraft.
Right, that level of detail suggests a real commitment to the strategy of chaos. But let's put the financial analyst hat back on for a second. The sources also provide a crucial reality check here. While the government claims it has millions of militia members ready, the country faces severe constraints. We're talking lack of personnel, extremely poor training, equipment that's dilapidated, falling apart, and critically very low salaries. That last point could easily cause massive desertions if things got serious.
So hang on. If their actual military capacity is so limited and the personnel are poorly paid, how financially viable is preparing for anarchization? Doesn't relying on a strategy of chaos risk the very institutional control they're trying to maintain, especially if soldiers aren't getting paid properly?
That is the absolute core financial paradox of this strategy. Analysts are pretty clear. Venezuela has almost no chance in a straight-up conventional fight against a superpower like the United States. Therefore, the primary goal here isn't military victory. It can't be. It's deterrence. This anarchization strategy, it's designed purely to raise the projected cost of intervention, both the financial cost and the human cost, so incredibly high that the United States would look at it and decide it's just too expensive, too difficult, too messy to even contemplate. They're trying to signal. An invasion means a forever insurgency. It means sabotage of critical infrastructure, think oil facilities, which are key to their economy. It means the huge financial burden of a long, bloody occupation in a city made deliberately ungovernable. So this strategy requires pouring vast resources, often probably through black market or unconventional channels, into decentralized training for irregular warfare, into equipment caches hidden away, rather than trying to maintain a large standing conventional military force they can't afford. They are essentially prioritizing making the country economically toxic for any potential intervention. #TAG3. Global economic policy and accountability. International focus continued.
Okay, let's shift our focus briefly now to some internal pressures within the United States itself. We've seen quite a bit of political and economic turbulence there recently. The House of Representatives is apparently preparing to vote to end what's been described as the longest government shutdown in history.
Yeah, and a prolonged shutdown like that, it's not just political drama, it creates a real quantifiable drag on the economy. Estimates from previous long shutdowns have put the economic cost in the billions of dollars lost in GDP. And that's not just because federal workers aren't getting paid, it's also disruptions to government services that the private sector relies on, things like loan processing, getting regulatory approvals, even the release of specialized economic data gets delayed. All that uncertainty creates this generalized slowdown across pretty much all sectors. It makes it an economically destructive political tool, and it definitely impacts global market confidence in the stability of U.S. governance.
And then, in almost sharp contrast to that huge macro-level political instability, we have this tiny microeconomic decision. The United States plans to get rid of the 1 cent coin, the penny. This is a move that's expected to save millions of dollars every year.
Right, and this is where you see pure economic logic kind of winning out over tradition. The cost of actually producing a low-denomination coin often ends up being more than its face value. That concept's called negative seigniorage. For the penny, the costs involve the copper, the zinc, the minting process itself, physically distributing it, have consistently been higher than 1 cent for years now. So retiring these low-value coins is really just a way to streamline the monetary system and achieve some modest fiscal savings. We're talking millions of dollars that are currently just being, burned simply to put these coins into circulation.
Okay, it sounds fiscally logical, but doesn't eliminating the penny potentially impact certain groups more than others? And what about the PR cost? It's a change the average person sees every single day.
That's the critical counterbalance, absolutely. Studies from places like Canada and Australia, they've already retired their lowest coins. They show maybe a one-time, very minor inflationary bump as prices get rounded up or down to the nearest nickel. Now, while that's theoretically minor overall, the rounding can disproportionately affect low-income consumers, people who tend to buy a larger number of low-cost individual items. And yes, the public relations cost is significant too. People often see currency as a symbol of stability, tradition. However, the economic argument for efficiency, for eliminate that negative seigniorage, it usually prevails in the end, especially when those savings can be argued to be redirected to more productive government spending.
And finally, staying in the international sphere for a moment, we have to touch on accountability and the really complex political economy of influence, specifically these new revelations concerning Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, these kinds of scandals, they erode institutional trust. And institutional trust is actually a key component of economic stability. When the public starts to perceive that the rules only apply to some people, well, that affects everything from tax compliance to confidence in democratic systems overall.
And some serious allegations have surfaced. One is that the New York Times apparently warned Epstein about a follow-up investigation back in 2017, one being carried out by an NYPD detective named John Connolly. That's a deeply concerning allegation, isn't it, about controlling privileged information? It suggests a potential high-level leak designed to protect powerful interests.
Oh, absolutely. If that's true, it cuts right to the heart of media integrity and the whole system of checks and balances that's supposed to hold the elite accountable. The political economy of influence, it allows powerful actors to shield themselves from investigation. A leak like that, if proven, suggests collusion that goes beyond just government boundaries into other powerful institutions.
And beyond that, new emails have come out revealing these direct, high-level political connections. It links this financial scandal right to the top echelons of power. Epstein reportedly called Donald Trump a dog that doesn't bark, and apparently assured someone he spent hours at Trump's residence. The White House has had to respond to this growing scandal, which shows how serious the political implications are.
That phrase, dog that doesn't bark, it's very telling, isn't it? It suggests perhaps an assurance of political silence, maybe even protection, regarding whatever operations were being run. When an individual who's accused of such pervasive criminal activity can boast about spending hours with major political figures, well, it really confirms how interconnected these elite financial, media, and political power structures can be.
And just add another layer, in what seems like parallel political maneuvering, Trump also apparently sent a letter to Israel's president asking him to pardon Benjamin Netanyahu from corruption investigations over there. So you take all these things together, the alleged intelligence leaks, the political connections, the attempts to influence foreign judicial processes, it paints a really complex picture of global political maneuvering that seems to operate outside transparent, legal, or frankly, economic frameworks. Hashtag FARV. National Economic Innovation and Development, El Salvador. Okay, let's make our transition now. We've been talking about this global theme of seeking, let's say, economic stability through unconventional or costly means, like Venezuela's anarchization idea or a serious bid to get sanctions removed. Let's connect that now to El Salvador's really aggressive push for stability, but through technological innovation and infrastructure. And we should probably start with the Bitcoin ecosystem that was highlighted by the recent Bitcoin Historico event right in San Salvador's Historic Center.
Yeah, this is a textbook example, really. A government deliberately using a disruptive technology, Bitcoin, not just as, another currency, but as a branding tool, an institutional tool. They're trying to position El Salvador as a global reference for financial innovation. This kind of event, it's part of that grassroots adoption strategy, trying to make it mainstream.
Right. And the event specifically involved, fun and learning activities for children, which is essential if you want long-term normalization and future adoption. And it featured the distribution of 21,000 free pupusas right there in Plaza Gerardo Barrios. That very cleverly marries community engagement with the country's big economic innovation push in a way that's very tangible, very memorable. And official statements, like from Elena Mayorga, strongly back this direction. They keep affirming that Bitcoin has indeed made El Salvador a global reference point.
But beyond the, let's call it populist outreach, the real economic question is about the institutional architecture that's supposed to support this claim. To truly be a global reference, the government needs to provide real regulatory clarity. They need a robust infrastructure for things like wallet security. They need to ensure the whole financial system can interoperate smoothly. The underlying goal, presumably, is to lower transaction costs, especially for remittances, which are huge for El Salvador, and also to attract foreign capital investment from people looking for a jurisdiction that actually embraces decentralized finance. It's carving out a niche economic advantage.
But is it sustainable? I mean, relying so heavily on an asset as volatile as Bitcoin for your national financial innovation, that seems inherently risky, doesn't it? What institutional measures are actually in place to try and mitigate that volatility risk for the broader economy?
Well, that risk is precisely the cost of being a first mover, isn't it? Of being a pioneer. The mitigation strategy, from what we can observe, seems to be twofold. First, they seem to be focusing on non-speculative uses like remittances, like payment processing. The idea is to capture economic efficiency gains regardless of the day-to-day price swings of Bitcoin itself. Second, and this is crucial, they're coupling the Bitcoin brand with strong, reliable improvements in traditional infrastructure. The government knows, or should know, that crypto alone can't sustain growth, which brings us neatly to the modernization of traditional commerce through technology. And that's where this new Center for Integrated Customs Intelligence, the CIA, comes in.
Okay, tell us more about the CIA. What specific technological innovation is really driving this center? What does it actually do?
Right. The CIA is critical if you want to move from just high-level branding, we're innovative, to tangible economic efficiency on the ground. The goal is integrated intelligence. That means strengthening cooperation between multiple institutions, customs, police, immigration, to drastically improve border control and, importantly, combat smuggling. The innovation lies in the technological architecture they're building. We're likely talking about implementing systems that allow for real-time data linkage between these agencies, probably leveraging AI for things like document analysis, maybe predictive analytics, to flag high-risk shipments before they even enter the country.
Okay, so what are the financial implications of doing that? Of deploying AI and real-time data linkage right at the border?
Oh, the implications are massive. First, cure efficiency. Modernized customs processes significantly cut down processing times for imports and exports. Every hour saved waiting at the border is a direct cost saving for businesses, especially those operating with tight, just-in-time inventory models. Second, control. Improved intelligence directly combats contraband, smuggling. Smuggling represents lost tax revenue for the government. By intercepting more of these illegal shipments, the CIA directly increases national revenue collection. It also levels the playing field for legitimate businesses, and it provides a cleaner, more accurate stream of data for economic planning. So this kind of technological investment, it should yield returns through both efficiency gains and direct revenue recovery.
And these internal reforms, they seem to be boosting other sectors too, right? Particularly tourism, which is a major source of foreign currency for El Salvador. The positive indicators for national growth look quite striking. Over 3.3 million tourists visited El Salvador so far in 2025, according to the sources.
Yeah, that volume of tourist traffic is a significant economic multiplier. But to sustain that, the country absolutely has to keep consolidating its international image, its projection, by hosting major events that are logistically demanding.
Yes, the sources specifically mention El Salvador hosting the Ironman 70.3 triathlon in 2026, and also the Aviation Day, which is an encounter specifically designed to promote connectivity and tourism. And El Sunzal, the famous surf spot, will also host the ISA World SUP and Paddleboard Championship in 2025. These are high-profile events, and they target specific, often high-spending tourist demographics.
Exactly. Hosting something like Ironman, for example, it's not just about the few days of the event itself. It brings a massive temporary injection of foreign currency from the athletes, their support teams, spectators. But maybe more importantly in the long run, it requires and justifies investment in specialized infrastructure. You need better roads, modern hotel capacity, high-quality emergency services, all of which serve the broader economy long after the event is over. And the focus on Aviation Day, that highlights the understanding that investing in air connectivity and negotiating better routes, more frequent flights, is absolutely non-negotiable if you want sustained tourism growth.
And speaking of infrastructure, the COAM's OPAM FS, that's the planning office for the San Salvador metropolitan area, reports they're driving urban modernization and projecting a historic close-in investment for 2025. Plus, the Ministry of Public Works, MOPT, has projected a January start for the expansion of the Littoral Highway, the coastal highway.
These large-scale infrastructure projects are critical catalysts for sustained economic stability. The expansion of the El Litoral Highway, for instance, that directly reduces logistical costs for commerce and travel along the coast. It improves access to those highly promoted tourist zones like El Senzal, and it boosts the commercial viability of all the surrounding areas. These kinds of investments increase the country's overall economic capacity.
And how did these big investments, the highway, the customs center, how do they connect back to the smaller players, to the micro and small enterprises, the MYPs?
This is a crucial connection. The sources note that Salvadoran MYPs exported about $5.1 million by the end of September 2025. Now, while that figure might seem small compared to the national GDP, it represents the health of the grassroots entrepreneurial ecosystem. MYPs are the backbone of local employment in many ways, so improved connectivity from projects like the El Litoral Highway expansion combined with faster, more efficient customs processing thanks to the CIA, that dramatically lowers the barriers for these small businesses to access and compete in international markets. Logistics, getting goods across borders efficiently, is often the single biggest cost and headache for MYPs. So these infrastructure and technological efficiencies directly support their export growth and help these small companies potentially scale up, moving from just domestic sales to global operations. #VB, national social concerns and human rights.
Okay, so while those economic and technological narratives sound very positive, very aggressive, we also have to address some significant social and human rights challenges that are emerging at the same time, because these carry their own long-term financial consequences. Let's start with the really grave findings detailed in that joint Human Rights Watch and Cristosal investigation.
Yes, this is the critical shadow, isn't it? The narrative that runs counter to the secure destination image the country has worked so hard to project. International perception, it's a fragile economic asset. It can be damaged easily.
The report focuses specifically on the ITCOIN mega prison. It reveals accounts of violence, alleged torture against 40 deported Venezuelans who were incarcerated there after being deported back to El Salvador. Their testimonies, according to the report, suggest they arrived in hell.
This adds substantial weight to the ongoing international scrutiny regarding the treatment of detainees within El Salvador's prison system. And the impact of reports like this is deeply economic, even if it's indirect at first. While the country is aggressively marketing itself as a secure place for tourism for foreign direct investment, FDI, based on undeniable gains in reducing gang violence, these serious human rights allegations can severely damage those international perceptions. Specifically, they can impact future foreign investment decisions. They can raise the country's risk profile, potentially affecting loan negotiations with multilateral financial institutions. Think the IMF, the World Bank, where governance and human rights records are increasingly factored into lending terms and conditions.
In fact, the source material points out that Ecuador's new maximum security prison, which just received its first 300 prisoners, is specifically mentioned as aspiring to replicate the, quote, Bukele model. That suggests the model itself and the allegations associated with it are now being watched very closely and judged internationally.
That is the ultimate risk to the national brand, isn't it? If the security model becomes internationally synonymous with severe human rights violations, then the very real economic benefit gained from reducing gang violence could be continuously undermined by this reputational risk. It forces foreign partners, investors, tourists to constantly weigh the undeniable safety gains against the potential moral cost. And that complicates the country's efforts to integrate smoothly into global economic and political frameworks.
Okay, shifting now to labor issues. We're seeing signs of significant instability in the public sector, particularly around education and pensions. And this has substantial implications for human capital.
Yes, the human capital drain here is quite alarming, and it definitely has long-term financial implications for the public education sector.
An estimated 2,000 teachers, we're told, opted for voluntary retirement ahead of 2026. The unions are attributing this massive exodus to several factors: labor instability, a lack of comprehensive pension reform they feel secure in, and even specific threats that their positions might be eliminated due to institutional restructuring.
Losing 2,000 experienced educators all at once puts immense, immediate pressure on the public education system's human capital. The financial cost of just replacing them is significant. Hiring, training, integrating new teachers takes time and money. But perhaps more critically, the loss of that institutional knowledge, that accumulated experience, it inevitably degrades the quality of education over time. And that acts as a long-term drag on national productivity and overall economic competitiveness. Now, on the flip side of the pension issue, the government is apparently proposing to make the advance payment of pensions something equivalent to an aguinaldo, a bonus permanent for retirees.
Okay, so how does that proposed benefit making the aguinaldo permanent? How does that stack up against the broader financial sustainability concerns for the pension fund? Especially when you have 2,000 experienced workers voluntarily leaving the system, presumably because they lack confidence in it.
Well, the benefit itself provides immediate, tangible relief and support to current retirees. That's politically popular and socially valuable, no question. However, the mass voluntary retirement itself signals deep underlying mistrust and instability in the system's future. When experienced workers choose to leave en masse like that, they're essentially betting against the system's long-term viability. The source material noted that the government had previously duplicated a loan from the pension fund. While we don't have the specific details on how this permanent aguinaldo would be financed, any permanent increase in liability puts ongoing pressure on the fund's reserves. It strains the government's ability to manage its long-term financial promises, and that could potentially jeopardize the security of future retirees' capital down the road. So you could see it as a short-term political win, potentially creating a long-term structural vulnerability.
And finally, under social concerns, we have some critical health issues demanding immediate attention and resources. A community leader named Antonia is making a public plea for a hospital specifically for renal patients in the Carasucia area. This plea is backed by documentation showing over 200 cases of chronic kidney disease just in that region.
That is a stark indicator of a severe, highly localized public health crisis. Chronic kidney disease, which is often linked to environmental factors or agricultural chemicals in parts of Central America, it's absolutely devastating for communities. And the economic burden is immense. It leads to massive losses in worker productivity as people become too sick to work. It requires incredibly expensive long-term dialysis treatment, and it puts enormous stress on local health budgets, if they even exist. Establishing a dedicated renal care hospital in that area wouldn't just be a humanitarian act, it would be an economic investment. It would improve the economic capacity of that community by reducing the debilitating impact of the disease.
Adding to the health concerns, there's news about approximately 150 retired military and police personnel who returned from a mission in Africa. They're now suffering from malaria. They're reportedly receiving medical attention, but the sources say there's no public data available on the specifics of their cases or the situation.
Yeah, the lack of public data there is a concern, primarily regarding transparency, but also regarding the effective management of a potential communicable disease risk. Malaria, if it's not aggressively contained, can spread. Considering these personnel were returning from abroad, the government really has a responsibility to provide sufficient data to reassure the public that all necessary health security measures are being taken. They need to show they're preventing any potential localized outbreak, which could cause, at least a temporary shock to the health system and potentially the local economy.
And lastly, on the governance front, there's a move by the government to dissolve two key social entities. COAIPD, which is the National Council for Comprehensive Care of Persons with Disabilities, and also the Council for Older Persons.
Right. The dissolution of specialized entities like these is often justified under the banner of achieving greater governmental efficiency. Maybe centralization, a way to consolidate budgets, eliminate functions that might seem overlapping. However, these specialized councils often play a crucial role as advocates and service coordinators for vulnerable populations. The risk here is that the intended financial savings from centralization could be completely outweighed by a significant drop in the efficiency or the quality of care and support actually delivered to persons with disabilities and the elderly. That could lead to downstream social costs that far exceed any initial budgetary benefits gained from the consolidation. #66, Midpoint Check-In, host Speaker Neutral Journalist.
We're covering a lot of ground here, moving from the operational theater of the USS Gerald R. Ford in the Caribbean, all the way down to the efficiency measures of the new Customs Intelligence Center in El Salvador, and even this very localized health crisis in Carasucia. If you are finding value in this deep dive, in this level of granular analysis, we really do encourage you to support our work. Your contributions are what enable us to dedicate the time needed for this kind of research and synthesis. You can collaborate or donate through the payment options that includes PayPal or QR Bitcoin, and you'll find those links right in the content description. #Day7. Conclusion and final summary.
Okay, so trying to synthesize this really complex landscape, weaving together the economics of global conflict, the push for technological innovation, and these national social stability issues. I think we can draw maybe three main conclusions from our deep dive today. First, there's a clear geopolitical fracture happening. The high-stakes international intelligence framework, specifically for anti-narcotics in the Caribbean, it's dramatically broken down. We see this most clearly in the withdrawal of cooperation by major partners Colombia, and significantly, the United Kingdom explicitly citing the perceived illegal use of United States military force. And this ethical divergence is happening even as the U.S. escalates militarily, deploying its biggest asset, the USS Gerald R. Ford. That intelligence gap creates a high volatility risk for global narcotics flows and regional stability. Second, the theme of stability versus sanctions is paramount. The pursuit of economic stability is clearly the central driver for nations currently locked in conflict or facing intense international pressure. We see this highlighted by Syria's very direct bid to get crippling sanctions, like the Caesar Act, lifted, seeing that as the only viable path to reconstruction and economic development. And this contrasts starkly with Venezuela's costly anarchization deterrence strategy. It's a strategy designed not for military victory, but purely to make the calculated financial cost of any intervention through guaranteed chaos and sabotage simply too high to contemplate. It confirms that profound link between international security calculations and projected economic welfare or economic pain. And third, there's this national dual focus in El Salvador. The country continues to invest very heavily in technological innovation. It's cementing its brand as a global reference for financial innovation through strategic Bitcoin adoption, yes, but also aggressively modernizing traditional commerce with things like the Center for Integrated Customs Intelligence, the CIA. But this forward-looking, high-efficiency economic push exists alongside and contrasts sharply with simultaneous critical challenges. Challenges in human rights accountability exemplified by those disturbing CECOT report findings, which carry high reputational risk, and also structural instability in key social sectors like the mass teacher retirement signaling pension system worries, and that urgent, resource-intensive plea for basic renal care facilities.
So we've examined this whole range of competing narratives today, everything from the sort of mundane financial motivations behind ending the U.S. penny negative seigniorage all the way to the extreme human cost detailed in that CECOT report. The essential question, maybe, that you should consider as you think about how nations balance these competing priorities is this. How do nations effectively balance those immediate needs? The need for economic growth, the need for security, which often seem to require unconventional or costly measures. How do they balance that against the long-term demands of human rights accountability and building sustainable, trusted institutional stability? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the complex currents shaping the global and regional economy.